some paper. And finally, on a gorgeous afternoon, we're going to be making some paper, and you'll be able to see the basic steps to making that first piece of paper, that when you get your kit, you will be able to use some of the bits and pieces that we have in it. So welcome aboard. I'm actually going to run through with the process, and then I'll film a little bit closer so you can see it in detail. So with all our mould and decal sets, when they come, they're red cedar. They're beautifully Western red cedar, and the reason is red cedar likes water, and so it's beautiful timber to make your mould and decals last. So that's why we use red cedar. So we have our mould and our decal, and when you're making a piece of paper and you've got your kit, you use the decal, which is the frame, on top of the screen, which creates a mould to capture all the pulp. And so that's what we're going to be doing now. So just going to take a moment to say thank you to everybody too who has purchased our Born in Paper making kits or some of our stationery. It's lovely to see so many people really enjoying what we do, and hopefully you will be able to get something out of this as well. All right, so I'm just going to start by moving my pulp around. It has been sitting for a while. You may have seen it settle, and so each time I will pull a piece of paper, we're going to move the pulp around. Okay, down we go. So for me, I often say to people, think you're diving into the pool. Don't plonk it into the pulp. Don't be rough. Just sort of go in. You want to gather a little bit of pulp. If you're going to move it around, do not move it around once you lift it up from the surface. You can do that under the surface, but once you lift it up, you need to keep it quite still and let it drain. So here we go. I'm going to go in. I'm going to pick up some pulp, and I can already tell this piece is going to be fairly thick, so you can see it. It's probably half the way up from my frames, which are 18mm. So at the moment, the pulp is probably be about 8mm. I know that sounds right to the point, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, and so as I lifted, you would hear the water draining, and now I've just turned that corner down to drain any further excess water out. Then I'm actually going to, I always will sit the mould to take the decal off on the tub. It's just something that's out of the, it's easy to do. Okay, so we're going to go through that again shortly. I'm just actually going to get this a little bit closer now. So pulling that first piece of paper. On my left, your right, is a tub here where I've made a number of different recycled papers. We've had shredded office waste, some cardboard, and a few little handfuls of sawdust. I throw everything in the blender to make the pulp. So here we are. It's quite runny, lots of water in it to keep that pulp floating. And then we have our mould and our decal, our beautiful Born in Paper mould and decals that if you've received one of these, I'd like to big thank you, shout out to you all. Thank you so much for your support. We make them here, and I want to show you how to make paper, how I make it, using some of the little techniques that you'll pick up on our YouTube channel, if you'd like to click and subscribe, or if you'd also like to go to our blog page on the website. So we get our mould and we get our decal. Now the decal goes on top. It's really important. So the decal goes on top of the screen, and you square them up, hold them like this, and just pretend you're going to go for a bit of a dive into the pulp and lift that up. And the water, as you can hear, is coming through the screen. You can see that. And then as it starts to really drain away, I'll turn that right over. Take off the decal. So all I've done is taken off that decal, And here's our piece of paper. Yes, you are going to have a bit of water everywhere. That's half the fun. Okay, so the most important thing is once we pull the piece of paper, you have to get it off the screen and you have to start the process to remove water from the paper. So the easiest way that I do anyway is I think to myself, I'm going to close the door. Trust the fact that the pulp has pulled through the screen. It is not going to fall off. So you turn that over, and I always tend to push down on that. The water comes up through the screen. There's water, and then you use the back of the sponge, or use a sponge, to push down on the screen, and then you give it a little rock until you open that door again to reveal your piece of paper. Now, as I said before, if we're going to tip it out, turn it over now, it's going to be very runny. It won't hold. It won't be a great piece of paper. It won't be great quality. It'll be more like a cardboard. It'll want to crack, and it'll be quite thick. So the more that we can now carefully roll and remove some water in a couple of steps, the better quality the paper is going to be. We are going to now flip them over, and we're going to remove this very first cloth that we had, because it's clearly the wettest. It was the very first contact of the piece of paper, so it's very, 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 very wet. We're then going to get another cloth, lay it on top. Now I've got a number of cloths that I use. The bamboo and wadding cloths that are in our kits are probably some of the nicest to use, but these microfiber cloths are wonderful. If you're making a lot of paper, you will need to squeeze them and reuse them. Big squeeze there, using the muscles. Going to do this one more time, and then we have, and I'm putting more pressure on this. Actually, I'm really pushing very hard on this piece of paper now, because I'm confident that I'm not going to split it. It's going to be a lovely piece of paper ready to turn out onto a board. And whenever I put a piece of paper on the board, I tend to roll it really flat. And this is really important in the drying process. If you make a piece of paper, as it starts to dry, very much like a clay pan, it's going to dry from the outside and then move in. If the outside is lifted not onto the board securely, you're going to have that wavy piece of paper. And if you want a nice smooth piece of paper, just make sure you've really rolled that onto the board. And it's at this stage that if you wish to use any of the embossing tools, this is where we do it. There you are, that was the embossing that I had done. So really simple, but embossing you do when the paper has first been made and it's nice and wet, and when it dries you get that beautiful pattern.